So on the board we have text number 19, so we can repeat that. Atmanityo vyavashuddha ekakshetrajña ashraya avikriya swadraghetur vyapako sangyanavrataha atmanityo vyavashuddha ekah kshetrajña ashraya avikriya swadraghetur vyapako sangyanavrataha atmanityo vyavashuddha ekakshetrajña ashraya avikriya swadraghetur vyapako sangyanavrataha atmanityo vyavashuddha avikriya swadrighetur vyapako sangyanavrataha atmanityo vyavashuddha ekakshetrajña ashraya avikriya swadrighetur vyapako sangyanavrataha atmanityo vyavashuddha ekashretatnya ashraya avikriya swadrighetur vyapako sangyanavrata atmanityo vyavashuddha ekashretatnya ashraya avikriya swadrighetur vyapako sangyanavrataha. We'll read text number 20 also. Etadvadashabir vidwan atmano lakshane pare aham mametya sadbhavam dehado mohajam tyajet. Word to word translation. Atma, the spirit soul, the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nityaha, without birth or death. Avyaha, with no possibility of dwindling. Shuddhaha, without the material contamination of attachment and detachment. Ekaha, individual. Kshetratnya, who knows and is therefore different from the material body. Ashraya, the original foundation. Avikriya, not undergoing changes like the body. Swadrik, self-illuminated. Hetuhu, the cause of all causes. Vyapakaha, spreading throughout the body in the form of consciousness. Asangi, not depending on the body, free to transmigrate from one body to another. anavritaha, not covered by material contamination. Etai, by all this. Dvadasabi, 12. Vidwan, a person who is not foolish, but fully aware of things as they are. Atmanaha, of the spirit soul. Lakshanahi, symptoms. Parai, transcendental. Haham, I. I am this body. Mama, mine. Everything in relationship with this body is mine. Iti, thus. Asad bhavam, a false conception of life. Deha ado, identifying oneself with the material body and then with one's wife, children, family, community, nation, and so on. Mohajam, produced from illusory knowledge. Tyajet, must give up. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Atma refers to the Supreme Lord or the living entities. Both of them are spiritual, free from birth and death, free from deterioration, and free from material contamination. They are individual, they are the knowers of the external body, and they are the foundation or shelter of everything. They are free from material change. They are self-illuminated. They are the cause of all causes, and they are all pervading. They have nothing to do with the material body, and therefore they are always uncovered. With these transcendental qualities, one who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life in which one thinks, I am this material body, and everything in relationship with this body is mine. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 15.7, Lord Krishna clearly says, Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta. All the living entities are part of me. Therefore, the living entities are qualitatively the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the leader, the supreme among all the living entities. In the Vedas, it is said, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. The Lord is the chief individual living entity, the leader of the subordinate living entities. Because the living entities are part or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. I'll just read that again. Because the living entities are parts or samples of God, their qualities are not different from those of the Supreme Lord. The living entities have the same qualities as the Lord, just as a drop of sea water is composed of the same chemicals as the great sea itself. Thus, there is oneness in quality, but a difference in quantity. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by understanding the sample, the living entity, because all the qualities of God exist in a minute quantity in the living entities. There is oneness, but God is great, whereas the living entities are extremely small. Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan. Katha Upanishad 1.2.20. The living entities are smaller than the atom, but God is greater than the greatest. We read the whole purport. Huh? But kal yehi purport karne wale? No. So I'll just read it, yeah. Our conception of greatness may be represented by the sky because we think of the sky as being unlimitedly big, but God is bigger than the sky. Similarly, we have knowledge that the living entities are smaller than atoms, being 1/10,000 the size of the tip of the hair, yet the quality of being the supreme cause of all causes exists in the living entity as well as in the supreme personality of Godhead. Indeed, it is due to the presence of the living entity that the body exists and bodily changes take place. Similarly, it is because the Supreme Lord is within this universe that the changes dictated by the material laws occur. The word ekaha, meaning individual, is significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, matstani sarva bhutani na chaham tveshavastitaha. Everything material and spiritual, including earth, water, air, fire, sky, and the living entities, exist on the platform of the spirit soul. Although everything is an emanation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not think that the Supreme Lord is dependent upon anything else. Both God and the living entity are fully conscious. As living entities, we are conscious of our bodily existence. Similarly, the Lord is conscious of the gigantic cosmic manifestation. This is confirmed in the Vedas. Yasmin Dyo Prithvi Chantariksham Vijnataram Adhikena Vijaniyat Ekam Evadit Vitiyam Atma Jyoti Smarad Ihovacha Sa Iman Lokan Asrijyata Satyam Jnanam Anantam Asango Hi Ayam Purushaha Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. All these Vedic injunctions prove that both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the minute soul are individual. One is great and the other is small, but both of them are the cause of all causes, the corporally limited and the universally unlimited. We should always remember that although we are equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality, we are never equal to Him in quantity. Persons with a small fund of intelligence, finding themselves equal in quality with God, foolishly think that they are equal in quantity also. Their intelligence is called avishuddha buddhaya, unpolished or contaminated intelligence. When such persons, after endeavoring hard for many, many lives to understand the supreme cause, are finally in actual knowledge of Krishna, Vasudeva, they surrender unto him. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sadurlabha. Thus they become great Mahatmas, perfect soul. If one is fortunate enough to understand his relationship with God, knowing that God is great, Vibhu, whereas the living entity is small, Anu, he is perfect in knowledge. The individual exists in darkness when he thinks that he is the material body and that everything in relationship with the material body belongs to him. This is called Aham Mama. Janasya Moho Yam Aham Mameti. This is illusion. One must give up his illusory conception and thus become fully aware of everything. Hare Krishna. Long purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalitam Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Hari Gopal Prabhu, for engaging me. Seeking the blessings of my Pratapadaksha Guru, Adikeshwar Prabhu, and Prem Leela Mataji, by whose mercy I'm here practicing, trying to be a devotee. So, long purport by Srila Prabhupada, and I was just thinking that for Srila Prabhupada to give such a long purport, it means that this particular verse is actually very, very important. Of course, this whole chapter is so important because we can see this whole discussion that is taking place between Prahlad Maharaj and all this Asura children, which is taking off from the previous chapter and then coming on to this chapter, basically is stemming from this one question that is asked by these children that, my dear Prahlad, all of us are associating with each other over here, right, in the palace, and you have actually never left the palace. And we are under the control of Shanda and Amarka, who are our spiritual masters or teachers. And they are giving us this gyan, and you are also a recipient of this gyan. So, how is it that you have actually heard all this from Narad Muni? How is it possible that you have heard? I mean, they were bewildered, right? For them to, Prahlad is 5 years old, and during that entire period, he's been associating with the children. Now, where did you come into contact with Narad Muni? Is a question that the children are asking, a very relevant question, right? And actually, you can see that the children are also very, very intelligent, right? These children are also not ordinary children. They have been witness. First of all, they are associating with the pure devotee of Krishna, Prahlad. In addition to that, I'm sure they must have also seen Narsinghadev when Narsinghadev appears subsequently. So they are having the direct darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these children also have taken birth in that particular situation, right? Because they have obviously done a tremendous amount of pious activities in their past lives. So Prahlad is then explaining that I got this knowledge in the womb of my mother, right? And this is the gyan that he is actually now distributing. So we can see that modern science is telling us that it is only when the child appears out of the womb of the mother that the child actually is alive, right? Of course, we as practicing devotees, we know that the child in the womb is also alive and kicking. In fact, in the 5th month, the mother is the one who experiences all the kicks that the child gives, right? But yet, scientists maintain that the, the soul is not there inside the living entity in the womb. The soul, I mean, they don't even understand the concept of the soul. But for them, abortion and killing a child in the womb is perfectly normal, right? It's a way of life. You have a child, you abort it. No big deal. But the scriptures explain to us that the living entity in the womb is having as much consciousness as the living entity outside the womb. Right? In the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see this instructions that is going on between, Kapila Muni, the samvad between Kapila Muni and his mother, Devahuti, where Kapila Muni gives a series of very, very explicit instructions to his mother. How the living entity enters into the womb, how the conception takes place, and from the time the conception takes place right up to the time the child comes out of the womb, right? What all things the child undergoes inside the womb, right? So if the mother is eating something which is hot and spicy, all that goes into the child's that amniotic fluid. And there are so many worms, there are so many living entities which actually bite the child. The child is in such a miserable situation in the amniotic fluid with his back that is arched. Radhanath Swami was once explaining in a class that if we are put in the situation of a child in that position, we would not last for more than a few minutes. And yet this child is there for 9 months, right? Undergoing all the tapasya, right? And finally, when the child comes out, it doesn't come out crying. It doesn't come out laughing. It doesn't come out smiling. It comes out crying. In fact, the doctor, who's delivering the child has to whack that child in the back. The first thing that child experiences is a slap, right? And then it starts crying because all that mucus and everything comes out from its mouth. And the child is then able to breathe. And the first thing that the child does is to let out a loud cry. And all the parents and everybody are very happy. Oh, my child is alive, right? But the first expression of, sound, the first sound that the child makes is actually a cry of distress, because it is whacked so hard by the doctor, right? And throughout the life after that, Kapila Muni says that the living entity is, experiencing so much of misery, right? Dukhalayam ashashvatam. This material world is a place of misery, right? And sometimes, we feel that we are experiencing happiness. But what is this happiness? Like Srila Prabhupada would give this example of uh, um, um, a criminal who is taken into the middle of the lake and then dunked into the water till the point of time that he is practically drowning, right? And then he is removed outside and then he takes a breath of air and then he feels so relieved. And that he feels his happiness, right? And again he is dunked into the water and again he is brought out and again he is dunked. And this is exactly what the living entity is going through. The living entity is continuously experiencing misery in this material life, right? And the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam are giving it in such a graphic way. He spends his school, he goes to school, and then has so much of studying that he has to do. Then after that, he gets married, and then he has a children, and then the children do not take care of him in his old age, and he is lying over there, and he's trying to say something, but he's not able to speak also, right? Just when a person is about to leave his body, you know, the words he's trying to express, but actually the word guru, guru comes out of from his throat because he's not able to express. And in that miserable situation, seeing all his family members around him, he leaves his body. And based upon the activities that he has done in his life, he has to take birth once again in the womb of a mother. So this gyan in different ways is being given by Prahlad. But Prahlad is a pure devotee, right? Prahlad has not experienced any of the tribulations that he might have experienced, but he doesn't feel it because he's a pure devotee right from birth. He is come out completely self-realized. And at the age of 5, he is teaching this gyan to all the Asura children and to us, right? So this is basically what Srila Prabhupada has also been trying to give us through this Krishna consciousness movement, to give us a situation where we are able to practice and remember Krishna throughout the day. Like if you see which place has this regiment that 4:30 in the morning you have Mangalarti. There are temples, of course, that have that. But then from 4:30 in the morning right up to 9 o'clock, we have a packed schedule of having darshan, chanting a japa, taking darshan of the deities, Bhagavatam class. And then Srila Prabhupada would send all his disciples out for various services, right? If you see the initial days of ISKCON, it has been of extreme hard work. What we are actually experiencing today, the happiness, of an international society of Krishna consciousness. Wherever you go, in whichever part of the world, you see that there is a temple of Srila Prabhupada, right? So we are actually enjoying the fruits of the hard work of all the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who actually had gone through intense tapasya in order to build ISKCON. I remember there was one devotee in Italy. He later on became our god brother. He was initiated by one spiritual master in ISKCON, but later on he took re-initiation from Radhanath Swami, and then he would come down to Chopadi temple and he would, you know, give Bhagavatam classes. Very senior devotee. I mean, he's been there right practically from the time that Srila Prabhupada was there. But he could not take initiation from Srila Prabhupada. So he was mentioning that during the initial days of ISKCON, although when he came into the movement, he was already married, right? Both he and his wife got so much attracted to the Krishna consciousness philosophy that both of them took up to the practice of Krishna consciousness almost simultaneously. And in those days, if you wanted to practice Krishna consciousness in ISKCON, you had to be staying inside a temple. It was very rare that a person would practice Krishna consciousness outside. Grahasthas, brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, sannyasis. There were not so many vanaprasthas at that time, but sannyasis, grahasthas, brahmacharis, they would all stay within the temple, right? And each and every one of them would be appropriately engaged. So this devotee was telling me that in the initial days, there was no grahastha ashram, in the sense there was no place for grahasthas to live together. There was just a brahmachari ashram and there was a brahmacharini ashram. So he, as a Prabhuji, would stay in the brahmachari ashram and his wife would stay in the brahmacharini ashram. And they lived like this for 8 years. Unbelievable, right? But yet they were so happy because he was saying that my wife was engaged in so many services in the temple. She would do deity worship. She would be cooking for the deities. She would be stitching for the deities. Practically the whole day from morning to night, she would be fully engaged. There would be days, sometimes weeks, when we would not even meet each other. And I would be doing my book distribution and I would be doing my waking up of the deities in the morning. And then I would come back and, I would have some services in the temple. He was saying our days, that 8 years went away in a flash. We don't even know how those 8 years went. Yet we were so Krishna conscious because we were completely engaged in serving Krishna 24/7. And he was mentioning that actually all the devotees, not just himself, all the devotees would barely sleep for 3 to 4 hours, right? They would go out for book distribution. They would come back late at night, just have a glass of milk or some fruits and go to sleep. And again, next day morning, they had to be up for Mangalarti. Attending Mangalarti was compulsory. It was not an option. But they never really missed, experiencing the so-called pleasures of the Grahastha ashram. Living together, having children, and all those things for that 8-year period. They never missed it because they were so completely engaged. Later on, the temple had facilities whereby they could give them separate accommodation. And then after that, they had 2 or 3 children, right, who also became devotees. So the point is that, we see from the time of Sri Prahlad, right, how he was giving this gyan to all these children. Children were completely engaged in a very, very positive way in so many different activities, right? I'm talking about my own childhood, right? It was not long back, maybe 50, 55 years back. We would go to school and then we would come back. We would do our homework. And in the evening, from 4:30 or maybe 5 o'clock in the evening till 8 o'clock, we would be outdoors. Our parents absolutely had no knowledge where we were, right? And they were least bothered. Children are out playing, and you know, we would be going out, and there was so much of physical activity that we would be doing. And then we would come back and then, have prasad, go to sleep, and next day morning again go to school. So this was the schedule that a child typically would follow just about 50, 60 years back. There was no television to distract us, right? Weapon of mass destruction. We didn't have a television, right? Television came when I was like 25 years old, thankfully, right? And later on, we have mobile and, the smartphones, which has actually killed, everything that a child would be doing 50 years back, right? And parents have absolutely no conscience. They want to distract the child, they just give the child a smartphone. And you see 1 and 2-year-old children who are practically so much conversant with the smartphone, right? Throughout the day, they are, because actually, scientific analysis has shown that the child really doesn't understand what is happening in the smartphone. But it is just the flickering, light that is there that is so attractive to the child that the child's attention is continuously focused on that. That is the power of the smartphone, how it engages the. And then now, after all these years of thinking that, it's a smartphone has finally, degraded our children and the young generation, we have now in the recent past have this, AI platforms which are doing anything that you wanted to do, right? The Chat GPT, Meta AI, and Pilot, and so many different platforms. You just tell the system what you wanted to do, and it does it for you, right? If I want to prepare for this Bhagavatam class, for example, I just tell Chat GPT, give me a class that I can prepare. Just a few words I just have to type on Shloka 7, 7, 19, and 20. And Chat GPT will give me a completely well-prepared class. If I want to write a letter to Harigopal Prabhu, and I just say over there, write to Harigopal Prabhu in ISKCON language, it'll say, Dear Harigopal Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru and Gaurang. Unbelievable, right? We are fascinated by that today because we are thinking that this is the latest technology. But 20 years down the line, there is going to be something, and this letter will be ending with, yours in the service of Srila Prabhupada, your servant, Krishna Naam Das. And whatever content you want, you just tell ChatGPT to do it for you. Just tell Harigopal Prabhu, I will not be coming for my seva today. And it shoots out an email, and Harigopal Prabhu will get an email in his email box. So now scientists are studying the brain of a person who has been using ChatGPT. It's been there for a few years now, right? It is available to the common person now on your smartphone, right? Free of cost. But till a few years back, it was not so readily available. But people were using it. People were in that domain of, IT and tech and AI. They were using ChatGPT for quite some time. And doctors are now analyzing the brain of a person who has been using ChatGPT for some time. And what they have found is really shocking. They have found out that the brain of that individual has atrophied. What the Word atrophy means just like, muscles of the hand, if they are not used, they lose its power, they lose its strength, right? Similarly, a section of the brain has atrophied. It is no longer able to function. And what is the result of that over a period of time? What will happen to that individual is going to be either Alzheimer's or dementia, which is exactly the thing that, a person gets at the age of 70, 80 when he has not used his brain. So, what is the future holding for all of us, right? Unless and until we, take shelter of Srila Prabhupada and be a part of this institution which gives us so many activities to do, right? Whether you are a doctor like Adikeshwar Prabhu, or whether you are an engineer, or whether you are a, you know, any individual in whatever capacity, Srila Prabhupada has a service for him to be engaged. And not just engaged 24 by 7 with minimal amount of sleep. Sleeping for 4 to 5, 6 hours a day, that is the bare minimum that is required in order to keep body and soul together. And the remaining hours can be fruitfully engaged, right? And if you can't do anything else, Srila Prabhupada has said that you can chant unlimited number of rounds, right? Bare minimum is 16, but then you can chant 32, 64. And there are devotees who are doing that, who may not have any other engagement, and they are so much attracted to chanting the holy name that they chant for practically the whole day. In Mayapur, if you come, there are so many devotees who are doing it, right? So that's also an engagement. You get up in the morning at 2 o'clock and you start chanting your rounds, right? Of course, there's very few people who could do that. Majority of the people need to have physical activity, right? And that is how the Krishna consciousness movement was spread all over the world, where devotees were engaged physically, in building all these temples. Like if you see the Radha Rasbihari temple in Juhu, Surabhi Maharaj and, all the devotees were actually physically bringing cement and sand and, bricks, and the whole building was actually put together by devotees till one point in time. And then Srila Prabhupada after that said, let us get some professional companies to do it. And then Larsen and Toubro, was brought in order to finish Sri Radha Rasbihari temple. But this was the activity. And, if you read Giriraj Swami's, book, or if you read Harishauri Prabhu's Transcendental Diary, you will see that devotees, they would right from morning till evening be fully engaged. And if you are having that great fortune to be engaged within the Krishna consciousness society, then what is the need for us to even look for a job outside, right? In those days, even the grastas, they were maintained by the temple. The temple would take care of their roti, kapda, makan, and they were completely satisfied just being in the association of devotees, chanting their rounds, doing their services, right? But understanding the needs of each and every one of us, that, we need to have some savings in order to take care of our families for the future, and so on and so forth. But Prahlad is explaining to the children that all this, in the previous verses we saw, that finally who is taking care of us? It's Krishna, right? To the extent that we are surrendered to Krishna, Krishna reciprocates. Ye yatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. So, Lord Krishna is our father, is our mother, is our everything. If we are able to take shelter of Krishna, then every need of ours, whether it is emotional, whether it's physical, whether it is financial, whether it is mental, everything would get taken care of. Krishna only says, just surrender unto me, right? But this takes obviously time. It's not something that comes overnight, right? The practice of Krishna consciousness is a very sublime process. The process of sadhana bhakti is a guaranteed process of cleansing the heart, right? And all of us, whether we are practicing Krishna consciousness for 1 month or 1 year or 30 years or 50 years, all of us are sadhakas, right? All of us have to chant our rounds every day, right? We have to associate with devotees. We have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? So hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam class is so important because it keeps us focused. And Srila Prabhupada understood this, that we need to also imbibe the philosophy along with doing our services. We can't be just doing services randomly, right? We also need to be understanding why we should serve Krishna, how we should serve Krishna. And all that knowledge is available in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
The question should be off mic. Krishna Prabhu, this question should be off mic. You said you were playing from 5 to 8 o'clock. Then how did you become a CA without studying? हम लोग इधर बच्चों को खेलने को भी नहीं छोड़ते पढ़ाई करने बोल के.
So it's the early childhood, the age which Prahlad is in, that we really, need to do that much of kasrat. And it is something that, develops the body, it develops the bones, right? It develops the mind. It, broadens your mind, and it allows you to have relationships with the children that you are playing with. That's why Srila Prabhupada actually set up the Gurukul. Otherwise, why did Srila Prabhupada set up a Gurukul when, the parents are engaged in their activities and the children are there? Children are also attending, maybe a lot of the children were actually attending Mangalarti in the temples, right? But Srila Prabhupada knew that children also need the association of other children. They need to fight. They need to embrace each other, right? They need to make bonds. There'll be, among those children, there will be few children who will come together and become very deeply connected, right? I remember in our childhood also, we had children with whom we were very close to. There were children who we did not like at all. We hated them, right? So all these emotions can only manifest when you are associating with other children. How can it manifest when you are associating with an adult, right? So children need other children to grow up and understand the intricacies, right? So again, our classroom was filled with like 100 students. Today, you go to any typical classroom not in India, but you go overseas, you will find there are 10 children, 12 children, right? And hardly any interaction with the children. That the children, spend very less time outside, because although it is perceived by us that America is a land of milk and honey, it is not that. It's a place which is either too cold or too hot. When it is too cold, you can't go outside. When it's too hot, you can't go outside, right? So where will the children play? So they have air-conditioned badminton courts. They have air-conditioned, table tennis courts. And so all the activities which used to be outdoor has now become indoor, right? For us, when we were children, indoor activities meant carom, cards, right? Snake and ladder. Those were the indoor games that we would play. Outdoor means cricket, football, But today the weather, particularly in the West, is so extreme that there are very few months in a year that a child can actually play outside. Right? Majority of the month, the child is just cooped at home. So America is not a land of milk and honey by any stretch of imagination. It's a place of great tapasya. It's better to be in India and be with nature and earn a little less money, and rather than you know do tapasya in a foreign place where actually if you ask a person who is there, he'll tell you more than I can. But is that okay, Mataji? We can, when I
Hare
come to
Krishna.
you for prasadam, you can.
How did you become a CA? That's the question.
Okay.
Krishnanam Prabhu, nice. Thank you very much for, especially the part where you said about artificial intelligence. I know it saves time, just put few things and you get. So my question is that even if suppose on some Bhagavatam you have to take, but where does artificial intelligence derive this from? Now in ISKCON Desiratory, we also an option. No, I have to find out from this speaker what he has spoken on this. That is very pure, right? Now he said if you depend more on this, your brain is going to get atrophied. It's a very scary thing. Huh? Just to not to make your own attempt to understand and repeat. So anyway, my question is one, of course, very scary. Okay, if you depend more on artificial intelligence, especially when we are saying that knowledge should be derived, in parampara. So artificial intelligence, where does it derive? If some class, so where is it getting from? Oh, does it refer to Prabhupada's books?
So now, why is it that artificial intelligence is relevant today? Relevant in the sense, I mean, why is it more active today? Because in this universe of the internet, for the last 40 years, there has been unlimited amount of data uploaded. Every class, every transcription, practically, that has been uploaded on the internet is there for eternity. So it is. So what ChatGPT does is it just picks up the phrases of that question that you are asking and goes into that universe of the internet and picks up the relevant data and gives it to you. So now, for example, it may be true, it may not be true. If Srila Prabhupada has given a class on this particular verse, right? Or some sannyasi or some devotee in ISKCON has given a class on this verse, and that verse has been transcribed and put onto the internet. Then when you say that, please give me a class prepared on verse number 19 and 20 of the 7th chapter of 7th canto, ChatGPT will just search the entire universe, pick out that particular information and present it to you.
But there can be a Mayavadi class also in that internet.
Yes, absolutely. That is why there is a disclaimer down in ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not always right. So please verify the data before you absorb it. Every statement is got a disclaimer. Now point is that the disclaimer is put so small below the ChatGPT, nobody pays any attention. But I looked at that disclaimer, right? ChatGPT need not necessarily always be right. Be careful. Savdan. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much, Hari Gopal Prabhu, once again for giving me a chance. Glad to be here at the Govardhan Eco Village in the association of all great souls, wonderful Vaishnavas. Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Krishnanam Prabhu ki.